And our trip today takes us to the Leeds, UK, Kirkstall Abbey, a 15th century monastery that's been maintained as well as possible throughout the years. The grounds is well maintained and it sits by a river as a visitor center. So let's go see it. And taking us to the Kirkstall Abbey is this gentleman from Eritrea, Africa, who left the country to seek a better life in the UK. And the UK is very diverse as far as people with different backgrounds and ethnicities. People from all over the world make their home in the UK. Started off at the visitor center there. It was like a gift shop with all kinds of trinkets. Then I saw this sign here with all types of birds that make their home at Kirkstall Abbey, and those are the visiting hours. And there she is, the Kirkstall Abbey Monastery. Take a look at the grounds and what you have to see there. The Kirkstall Abbey sits right next to this river named River Aire, which runs about 32 miles through Leeds, UK. It hosts a vast woodlands and all the birds that we just saw. It is a popular site if you want to go there to tie the knot or take some pictures or just want to enjoy the scenery. This is a great place to check out. So a gentleman that works in that gift shop there told me a very interesting story. He had told me that someone somehow stole a bell out of the bell tower atop the Kirkstall Abbey Monastery. And it is a mystery that remains to this day. How in the world and who stole that bell out of the tower? How is that even possible? Anyway, take a look at these pictures from the inside of the monastery. While exploring the ruins, I ran into this lovely couple. They said they were from Liverpool and they were just traveling around together. And that's one of the advantages of traveling, is just running into random people and hearing their stories. And that's a wonderful thing. This guy is Keith. He was the Uber driver that took me back to the hotel. He was very fascinated about hearing about stories from the US, particularly the 72-ounce steak eating contest in some restaurants in Texas. And he also told me about his wife and how much he loves her and how much he enjoys being an Uber driver to hear the stories of the people he picks up. So that is another fascinating part of travel, sharing stories with the locals. It's very enlightening and enriching. So before I leave Leeds, UK, let's take a look at the downtown area once again. I really love the English style buildings. It's a great architecture. Motown the musical, I bet that would have been fun. I wish I could have stayed for it. And look at Domino's, everybody's favorite pizza restaurant, also over there. And this was downtown. It was an indoor flea market with clothes, jewelry, and a bunch of knicks and knacks. And there's a British version of Wheel of Fortune. And my last night in Leeds, I just had to look at that beautiful view. And there's the view in the morning. Kissing it goodbye was sad. And we wound up in Burrow Bridge. What are we doing in Burrow Bridge? I was trying to get closer to York. Our calculations were off just a little bit, apparently. So I wound up at this Best Western in the middle of the city. And so we're here, we're on vacation, we're traveling. So let's see what they have to offer. Yeah, I'm enjoying the olden style English setup they have here, the chairs, the tables. It's real nice, actually. It feels real rustic, you could say. Now that bed was out, not to my liking. It felt a lot like lying on an ironing board, but once I got them to add some sheets to it and pack it on real good, then I was able to settle in and enjoy my visit. And there's the view from my room, that old building over there. And then it's like a building of some antiques. So I'm in the city now, just checking things out, and I really like the style, as I mentioned a couple times. And it was real misty that day because guess what? It rained. But who's surprised by that? But I still enjoyed it though. It's a real quiet town. It probably didn't even have 1,000 people in it. So I was just walking around the square, seeing what the place has to offer. There's some clothes there. There was a church. There was a tavern, and it was just like really, really old style, and I loved it. Now, a large number of the residents I met there were in the 50 plus age range, which is probably not surprising since it's a much quieter setting. A setting that was way different from the hustle and bustle of London, and even Leeds was much busier. This was more laid back and peaceful and, more of a place to get away. There really wasn't much in the way of attractions aside from that tavern right there, but they're all over the place. Or you could just go to church if you like. Or you could just walk through the neighborhood and enjoy the sun and the green grass. Or for those of you that have never been to England, you can take a look at how the residential area looks. And again, we're off. Where are we going this time? Well, just take a look. We finally made it to York. Yes. So here was around Black Friday. And as you can see, there's lots of shoppers walking around. Not really any parking spaces. It's looks like a city where you have to park and then walk around the different stores there. And if you don't want to walk, then you can rent you a bicycle, which you can see there. Lots and lots of bicycles to choose from. You can just pedal your way around the shopping areas and the rest of the city. York was very lively and it was popping pretty much everywhere you went. One place I stopped by was the Jorvik Viking Museum. When I entered the place, they had told me that this museum was built on the site where Vikings once had a community, which was very interesting. And what they're doing here is that they're trying to recreate the community that they had. And so here what they were doing is recreating the buildings the Vikings may have lived in at the time. They placed mannequins about doing things that they may have been doing. So take a look at some of these pictures to see what the Viking community may have looked like. You can see pottery, you can see people just lounging about, you can see them just like taking care of herbs or some kind of plants, taking care of the sick, and here are some artifacts they found on site as well. A really cool part of this museum is that they had a little ride that you could sit down on with an LCD screen, and the ride would just take you through the community, and that's where a lot of those pictures was taken. And on the LCD screen, it would explain the things that you're looking at. It's very, very cool and worth doing if you find yourself in York. And now check these out. Look at these artifacts that they found buried in the ground on the site. They had weapons, they had socks that they wore, they had a pan that they cooked in, they had pottery, and look at this, a nearly intact skeleton. Isn't that just so awesome? And beneath the case the skeleton was in was a little blurb about the findings they found about the skeleton. And here, look, they even had combs back then. So I guess some Vikings did care how they looked before they left the house, huh? So there you can see some spear tips and those socks I mentioned earlier. And there's the pan that they use, look like a modern day skillet. And there you have some pottery. And look, you have kitchen utensils made out of wood or bones. It's like some spoons there. Another comb. So grooming was definitely a thing among the Vikings, it would seem. To learn more clues about Viking culture, take a look at these pictures that I took around the museum. And standing out almost more than anything was the diverse cultures and ethnicities that you find in the UK. There were people from everywhere. At the hotel, at the front desk, was a girl from France. There was another girl working there from Holland. I'd ran into that couple you saw that was from Liverpool. Ran into a woman from the Caribbean. I was from America. The Uber drivers, one of them was African. I'd met another one that was from somewhere in the Middle East. So I guess the position of the UK in the world lends itself to having a huge melting pot of culture from everywhere. And the food I ate was delicious. I'm not sure what people were talking about when they said food from the UK is not that good, but I guess they say that about every country. Although the food from the bangers and mash, the fish and chips, the hot toffee cake with ice cream, and so many more dishes. I think I'm getting hungry now. So you won't have to worry about the food. There's something for everybody. So if you're planning a trip to the UK, I think you'll have some fun, no matter who you are. Just be aware that they drive on the left side of the road. When I got picked up at the airport by the Uber driver, well, I got in on the right side of the car, which is what we do in most countries. But on the right side is the steering wheel there in the UK, and the guy got alarmed. I had to say, no, I'm not trying to take your car. I forgot for a second I wasn't in America anymore, and your steering wheels are on the right. So as long as you remember that, and when you're crossing the street, watch the traffic since they drive on the left side. so you can see where the traffic goes, because it might be a little confusing at first. But after that, you're going to have yourself some fun out there. As for transportation, you can call an Uber, which I mentioned before. Gives you a good chance to speak one on one with a local while they take you to your destination. You also have the famous double decker buses. You have trains that run pretty much everywhere. And you could call a taxi. So you have plenty of options for getting around. And now, sadly, it's time to leave the UK and go back home. And guess what? It rained again on the way out. Of course, it rained. But overall, I would say I enjoyed my experience in the UK. The one thing that stood out to me is that museums were everywhere, depicting the culture and the history was well preserved. And best of all the museums were free. At the Leeds Bradford airport, I saw this little hologram that would talk to you and help you on your way. I hadn't seen that before at the time, so I was like kind of fascinated by that. So that concludes this video. I hope you liked it. Hope you'll leave a like and a subscribe, and join me for more adventures soon on this channel, The World of G-Bad.